They ended up pulling my kids out in the middle of the street in their underwear. By this time, the neighbors, are all looking out, seeing this go on. They have my whole street, every avenue to my street barricaded off. It looked like I was a cartel member.
So they yanked an 8-year-old kid out of your house at gunpoint and threw us in the front yard in his underwear for everybody to see.
Yeah, and left him there for a while. And they started to lay siege to my house. They locked me in that. They kept me in that room. I had no idea what was going on. But while I was in that room, they went and raided my house. They raided my cage, my car, which was at the team. They went to everything. And they sent a, 20 to 30 man SWAT team to my house. This is the crazy thing, is when they were taking me over to that interrogation room, I asked them, I was in the back of the car, handcuffed. I'm like, how long is this going to take? And they were like, why? And I'm like, because my wife's not home. She's at lunch or like a brunch with a friend. And I was like, my oldest son is leaving and I need to be back by, I think it was like 1 o'clock because my youngest son's there. I specifically remember this as those two looked at each other and they're like, oh no, yeah, we'll get you out. You'll be done by then. I was like, okay. Well, as I'm being, I'm in that office with no phone, wondering like what my kids are going to do. They were actually raiding my house during that time. My youngest son was downstairs watching TV. My oldest was still in bed.
How old?
He had just turned 18.
And your youngest?
8 years old at the time. The way they both have described to me what happened is, my youngest was watching TV. We have a big window that looks out into the street in our living room. He looked out the window and saw guys with automatic weapons coming up to the house in a train, He had said he saw a guy in the window, I think, with a gun, which he's 8 years old. He ran upstairs, got my oldest son, woke him up, and was like, there's guys with guns outside. My oldest son told him to get the fuck out of his room, or, was like, whatever, thought he was just being kooky. And he started crying and was like, no, there's guys with guns. I was like, you need to go look. So my oldest son walked downstairs and he said he could see somebody out of the window. And when he opened the door, there was a guy on his knees with a gun to him, pointed at him, and then two guys with other guns pointed at his head.
The 8-year-old?
No, this is my 18-year-old, and my 8-year-old standing behind him, crying. They were yelling at my oldest son to get his hands up, which he did. And then they were like, we need to come outside now. This is all, my oldest son is like, doesn't know what's going on. And he calmly was like, well, can I put my hands down to open the door? And they didn't know what to do. He said they just sat there like trying to figure out how to actually conduct a fucking raid or.
So these guys,
no, they were.
This is the first house they ever raided.
Yeah. And the crazy part is these are all NCIS agents. They had an FBI agent somewhere in the mix because they would not be able to conduct that raid without an adult there present. So that's what they used. Like they had an FBI guy there, like being like, oh, I'm overseeing this. But that goes to show you anything. These guys can't even conduct raids without an adult present. So they don't do anything stupid. They ended up pulling my kids out in the middle of the street in their underwear. By this time, the neighbors, are all looking out, seeing this go on. They have my whole street, every avenue to my street barricaded off. It looked like I was a cartel member.
So they yanked an 8-year-old kid out of your house at gunpoint and threw his ass in the front yard in his underwear for everybody to see.
Yeah. And left him there for a while. And they started to lay siege to my house. Now, my wife is Andrea. She's down the street, probably like 2 miles at a breakfast place having brunch with a friend. She gets a phone call from my daughter, who my daughter was in Ohio at the time, with her biological dad. And so one of the neighbors had called my daughter a girl that was our neighbor and was like, your brothers are outside with guns pointed at their heads in their underwear. Like, and there's people all over the streets with guns.
Holy shit. So
my daughter was like, calls my wife, and she's like, I just got a call from so-and-so, and this is what's going on. And, all this is probably like crazy. And they're just like, what? And so my wife gets up, and she's like, I got to go. Races home. And she said that she tried to pull up in our neighborhood and everything was blocked off. She somehow got a call from one of the NCIS agents, and she was like, I'm coming home. And they opened it up and let her through. She parked, and then they immediately started interrogating my wife. They brought her into a van, I think, and just started asking her all sorts of questions. And
you had no idea this shit was going on.
No idea that any of this was going on. I think it was my youngest son asked one of the NCIS agents why they were there. And they pretty much said, your dad's a murderer, or he's being like told the kids that I'm being like charged with murders, pretty much telling my kids I'm a murderer, which is insane to me. Why you would tell somebody's kids that when you don't have anything, at that point. And then, my wife pretty much told him to screw off in some form or fashion, and was just like, I have nothing to say to you. And then she went in and watched them pretty much take everything out of my house. Took all my kids' electronic equipment, took anything they could.
Damn.
They found, going through my garage, just like any other team guy's garage, I have all my kit bags and shit in there. So they were pulling out magazines that are high capacity magazines for California, and pretty much being like, oh, got them on this. I had this is actually pretty funny. I had a dummy grenade, or the blue body, in one of my kit bags.
Yeah.
They called EOD and said I had a live grenade in my house. So EOD, I guess, rolls up to my house, and come to find out it's literally a dummy grenade. And they were like, this is, just to give you an idea how incompetent these fucking guys are. The best thing I think I heard my wife say is when they were, they'd been there for hours, and she's just like watching them go through all of our shit and take it. And she told me, she's like, they all look like it was just a bunch of beta male, like, dudes, like, just, you could tell, like, these fucking guys have no idea what they're doing. And one of them came up to her, and I don't know if he put his hand on her shoulder or like did something. It was like, this must be really hard for you. What's going on right now? And I guess she told me, she looked at him, and she's like, you have no fucking clue what we go through in this community. She's like, you think this is fucking hard? She's like, you're out of your mind. Like, get the fuck, hurry, get your shit, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
So they, dispersed. I have no clue that this is going on. They come back in the interrogation room finally, and they're like, hey, all right, you can go. At this point, I'm like just fucking worn out just from sitting there for so long, wondering what's going on. I come out. They had my phone, and they're like, we're keeping your phone. I was like, all right. And they're like, I said, can I call my lawyer? Or I think it was either my lawyer or my wife. And they're like, oh yeah. They gave me my phone. I put the code in, and then they yanked it out of my hand. And they're like, you can't have it. And that's how they got into my phone. And right before I left the NCIS office, one of the agents, this little turd, Brian Frank, he actually testified at my trial. He's in there all kitted up. It looks like he's like this little kid playing airsoft. He looks right at me, and he's like, hey, when I was walking out, he's like, I saw your wife today. And I turned and looked at him like, what? And he's like, yeah, I saw her. And I was like, okay. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? I just walked out. Like, little did I know, until I got home, that they had pretty much laid siege to my house.
So they're fucking taunting you.
Yeah. Everything they did was to taunt me and try and get me to do something so they could be like, we got him. I mean, it was, at that point, I had no idea, but it became more evident as this whole nightmare went on. But I got home, and that's when, my wife and kids were in the living room just like, what the fuck? And yeah, that's when we knew. I was like, dude, this has gotten real. Like, what is going on?
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.